Around the World Lit Audio. Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en. Chapter 7. Xuanzang meets Sun Wukong. Full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter recap. In Chapter 6, Sun Wukong had been imprisoned beneath the Five Elements Mountain for 500 years, pinned there by the Buddha after his catastrophic rebellion against heaven, fed iron pills and copper juice. Surviving through the power of his own nature, which could not be destroyed even by the weight of a mountain. Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, visited him on her way to find a pilgrim for the journey to the West. He told her what he had learned in 500 years of thinking, that strength without purpose causes more harm than good, that he had mistaken power for wisdom, that being trapped gives you considerable time to think. He said he wanted to be released to do something with his abilities that meant more than proving he had them. Guanyin said, "There is a monk who will pass this mountain. When he does, you will be released, and your service will be the means of your redemption." Chapter 7. Xuanzang meets Sun Wukong. Chapter 7. The Emperor of Tang had chosen his monk carefully. The monk's name was Xuanzang, known also as Tripitaka, the name given to him in recognition of the task he had been assigned, which was to travel to India and bring back the sacred Buddhist scriptures that China did not yet have. He was a real person, a historical figure, a 7th century Chinese Buddhist monk, who made an actual journey to India and back, who spent 17 years traveling and studying, and returned with sutras that transformed Chinese Buddhism. Wu Cheng'en took this historical journey, and made it the spine of an epic novel, populating the road with demons and gods in the specific company of a monkey, and a pig and a water demon, who had each been sent to wait for the pilgrim as the condition of their own redemption. Xuanzang was not the most physically imposing of pilgrims. He was devout and scholarly, a man of genuine holiness, the kind of holiness that is not performed, but inhabited, that makes a person calm in situations where calm is not the obvious response. He had been a monk from childhood, had been trained in the sutras, had the specific quality of someone for whom the spiritual life is not an aspiration but a home. He was also entirely without the practical capabilities that a journey from China to India through dangerous territory would normally require. He could not fight. He had no supernatural powers. He was, by the standards of the novel's world, extraordinarily vulnerable, a man of complete goodness moving through a landscape of demons and mountains and kingdoms where goodness was not the primary value. This was deliberate. The Bodhisattva Guanyin had organized the journey this way, had arranged the disciples, had arranged the challenges, had arranged the entire structure of the pilgrimage with the specific intention that the monk's holiness and the disciples' power would be complementary rather than redundant. Xuanzang needed Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong needed Xuanzang. The journey required both of them. The Emperor of Tang sent Xuanzang off with ceremony. There were prayers and offerings and the specific pageantry of a Tang dynasty court at the beginning of an important undertaking. The Emperor gave Xuanzang a white horse, travel documents, and the formal authority of the Tang Empire behind his mission, which was of limited practical use in the territories beyond the empire's borders, but was the right thing to do. Xuanzang departed. He traveled west from the Tang capital, through the initial territories of the empire, through populated lands, through farmland and towns and the increasingly sparse settlements of the empire's western edges. He traveled alone, on his white horse, with his monk staff and his travel documents, and his complete vulnerability, which he did not experience as vulnerability because his trust in the Buddha's protection was absolute. The landscape became less settled. The roads became tracks. The tracks became paths. The paths became no particular thing at all, just the general direction of west, through terrain that was increasingly the kind of terrain that appears in Chinese epic literature as the space beyond civilization, mountains and forests and the specific quality of landscape that has not been organized by human intention. He encountered spirits. He encountered the kind of supernatural difficulty that the novel distributes along the road with the regularity of waypoints, each challenge demonstrating something, each encounter advancing something, each demon or obstacle serving the pilgrimage in the way that obstacles in Taoist and Buddhist understanding can serve, not as mere impediments but as tests, as the means by which virtue is demonstrated rather than merely claimed. He was frightened. This is important. Xuanzang was frightened, not the performed fear of someone who knows everything will be fine, but the genuine fear of a person who has walked into a dark and dangerous landscape, and is not certain of the outcome. His holiness did not protect him from fear. It protected him from allowing fear to prevent him from continuing. He continued. He reached the Five Elements Mountain. The mountain rose from the landscape with the specific presence of something that has been there for a very long time, and has accumulated significance through that duration, a mountain that was more than a mountain, that was the specific place where something important was waiting. He heard a voice. The voice came from beneath the mountain, from the rock itself, from the place where something had been imprisoned for 500 years. The voice said, "Master, Master, the great sage is here. Why don't you save me?" Xuanzang stopped. He looked at the mountain. He dismounted from his horse. He approached the rock and looked carefully, and in the crack of the cliff he saw two bright eyes peering out at him, and below the eyes a mouth, and below the mouth hands pressing against the rock from inside. He said, "Who are you?" The voice said, "I am Sun Wukong. I am the great sage equal to heaven. I have been imprisoned here for 500 years by the Buddha after my rebellion against heaven. The Bodhisattva Guanyin told me that a monk would come from the east, who would travel to fetch scriptures from the west, and that if I served this monk faithfully throughout the journey I would be released and earn redemption. Are you that monk?" Xuanzang said, "I am. I am going to the western heaven to fetch the scriptures." Sun Wukong said, "Then take the paper from the top of the mountain. It is a seal the Buddha placed there. Remove it and I will be free." Xuanzang climbed the mountain. He found at the peak a square piece of paper covered in golden light, on which were written the 6 characters of the Heart Sutra, Mani Padme Hum. He removed it. He descended. He had barely reached the base when the mountain began to move. It shook, not violently, not in the way of an earthquake, but in the specific way of something that has been compressed for a very long time and is now releasing. A slow deep trembling. That was the sound of 500 years of stillness coming to an end. Stones rolled down the slopes. The crevice in the cliff expanded. Sun Wukong emerged. He emerged from the mountain with the specific quality of someone for whom freedom, after 500 years, is a sensation so comprehensive that it requires a moment of adjustment. He stood. He stretched. He looked at the sky, at the actual sky, not the sliver of it visible through a crack in the rock, but the full sky, the whole of it, the sky that he had flown across in his previous life, and that he had not seen in its entirety since the Buddha's hand came down. He looked at Xuanzang. He knelt. He said, "Master." It was the first time Sun Wukong had knelt before anyone without being forced to. It was the first time he had called anyone master without the word being a performance or a manipulation. He said it with the directness of someone who has spent 500 years arriving at a genuine conviction, and is now acting on it. Xuanzang looked at him. He said, "I accept you as my disciple. Rise." Sun Wukong rose. He looked around at the landscape, at the mountains and the sky and the space that was now available to him in all directions, the space that had been absent for 500 years and was now simply there again. He began to move. He moved with the specific quality of the Monkey King, with the energy of a creature who was born to move and has been prevented from moving and has not lost a single degree of the original energy. During the 500 years of imprisonment, he leapt. He stretched. He tested his limbs. He transformed briefly into his original form and then back. Xuanzang watched. He had been told by Guanyin that the disciple he would acquire at the 5 Elements Mountain would be powerful and would need managing. This had seemed at the time like an abstract piece of information. Watching Sun Wukong in the first minutes of his freedom, Xuanzang began to understand it in more concrete terms. Guanyin had given him something for exactly this situation. It was a gift, a needle-thin golden headband, and a spell. The headband, if placed on Sun Wukong's head, and the spell spoken, would tighten when spoken again, causing a headache of sufficient intensity to make even the great sage equal to heaven reconsider whatever it was he was doing. Xuanzang did not mention this immediately. He offered Sun Wukong some clothes, some food. He treated him as a monk would treat a new disciple, with the specific warmth of a teacher welcoming a student, the genuine quality of Xuanzang's goodness extending to this particular creature as it extended to everything. Sun Wukong ate. He said, "What do we do now?" Xuanzang said, "We go west. We follow the road to India. We fetch the scriptures." Sun Wukong looked at the road. He said, "Let's go." They traveled together for the first time, the monk on his white horse, the Monkey King walking or occasionally leaping ahead, covering ground with the ease of a creature for whom distance is a category without the usual meaning. They moved through the landscape together with the specific quality of an unlikely partnership finding its rhythm, the monk's stillness and the monkey's motion, the monk's vulnerability and the monkey's invulnerability, the monk's complete trust and the monkey's 500 years of earned mistrust learning to become something else. But the partnership was not yet complete. There were other disciples waiting along the road. Zhu Bajie the pig demon, Sha Wujing the water demon, the dragon horse, each imprisoned in their own way, each waiting for the pilgrim who would release them into service. And the road to India was very long, and there were a great many demons between China and India who had heard that eating the flesh of the Tang monk would grant immortality and were, therefore, very interested in making Xuanzang's acquaintance. The journey had begun. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Chapter 7 of Journey to the West by Wu Cheng'en. In Chapter 8, the pilgrims encounter their first major demon on the road, and Sun Wukong demonstrates, for the first time in the service of the pilgrim rather than in his own interest, exactly what he is capable of. The golden headband also makes its first significant appearance. Chapter 8 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.